Morning, dear students. So, as I said, today we would be continuing on the discussion actually on the title, The Gentleman of the Jungle. So, before we could go to straight away to the text, let me ask you some of the couple of questions, though you cannot answer, but still yes, let you have these questions in your mind, and probably once when you're back to the college, then we will have a discussion. But still, one of the pre-reading activities of the questions that I asked you yesterday was about Panchatantra stories. So, did you really read any Panchatantra story that you got some kind of a moral in it? Any story from Panchatantra? Remember this, once when we actually meet face to face, probably I'll ask you this question about, like, what is the story that you read which gave you a moral? Why? In all the Panchatantra stories, we see that good always prevails over the bad, isn't it? In the similar way, you have a title here, The Gentleman of the Jungle. Okay, so we discussed certain facts relating to the author yesterday. I was telling you something about the title. We read about the author, where we came to know that he was the president of Kenya. There was a family called Kikuyu tribal people of Africa, that is from the country Kenya, and Jomo Kenyatta was also a president for the country, and he was the nationalist figure in the country, because he was the one who started working, or one who started agitating towards the Britishers or their European rule, because these people were putting their own land reforms, or they were, when they came to their country, they started exploiting the native people of those specific countries. Even India is also an example for that. What and all, everything, you know it better. Also certain things we have discussed in the last class as well, right? So one should be knowing about exact meaning of the word colonization in order to understand the gentleman of the jungle here. So that one particular thing, what do you mean by colonization? Understand in your mind, and at the same time, this story is actually working as a fable, a very short story or a story which consists animals as the what? Animals as the characters. Okay, heard of this book, The Jungle Book? Yeah, have you read this book, The Jungle Book? I forgot the name of the author, but yes, he is actually a one who wrote this book, like, the Jungle Book. And you might also have read or seen a movie like The Lion King, right? So what is going on there? So you have a fable, you have a story, but human beings are not the characters, rather it is the characters represented by animals. In the similar way, I asked you to observe the picture before we could start, and we also discussed about what is the background to the story, isn't it? So you got to understand certain things, and then if you remember it very well, then we shall start doing the lesson, or we will go straight away to the text. Okay, now what happens here is that the chapter or the short story is been titled as The Gentleman of the Jungle, and we see here that it is something that is indirectly told in terms of someone else. What is that? What is the colonization? What is their power? What exactly were they doing? All these things you will come to know in this short story. Clear? So let us straight away go to the text and start discussing on the gentleman of the jungle. Look at the very first line of the chapter, or the story opens up with once upon a time. This particular phrase once upon a time is obviously a narration that will be told in the form of a story to be prevailing, isn't it? So where do we normally use this word once upon a time? right? Once upon a time. So this is a common phrase that is used in order to tell us about the fables or the stories that we do still remember today, isn't it? So what we see here is that once upon a time an elephant made a friendship with a man. So Jomo Kenyatta starts telling us, narrating us the gentleman of the jungle in the form of a story, and the opening line of the story is that once upon a time an elephant, okay, so an elephant made a friendship with a man. So whom do you think that the main protagonist of the story here is? I am also talking to you something about the colonization and its after effects, especially with response respect to the European Union when they started expanding their lands and reforms, or by colonizing the other countries. So here an elephant made a friendship with a man. This is the first line of the story. You can follow it, right? Then one day a heavy thunderstorm broke out. What is thunderstorm? So heavy torrential rain along with lightning and thunder. Thunderstorm broke out. The elephant went to his friend who had a little hut at the edge of the forest and said to him, "My dear good man, will you please let me put my trunk inside your hut to keep it out with this torrential rain?" While you read this paragraph, the very first paragraph of the lesson, understand what do you mean by colonization. So if you know what is colonization, then if you read this paragraph, it will give you a clarity in understanding what Jomo Kenyatta is trying to tell us in this short fable. Okay, so once upon a time an elephant made a friendship with a man. One day a heavy thunderstorm broke out. So as both of them were friends, one day a heavy thunderstorm broke out. So the weather changed and it was very heavy rain along with lightning and thunder. The elephant went to his friend. Who was his friend? Obviously the man, right? So he had a little hut. A man had a little hut on the edge of the forest, that is maybe at the edge of the forest or something, and said to him that, "My dear good man, will you please let me put my trunk inside your hut to keep it out of this torrential rain?" So what do you need to understand here is that an elephant who made a friendship with the man because of the climate, because of the weather or something, it went to his friend and asked him if he could put his trunk, only the trunk, understand that, if it could put or if it can put the trunk in the hut. Will you give me some space to keep my trunk inside your hut in order to save it out from this torrential rain? So this was the request by the elephant. Clear? So let us see what the man does. But before that, let me tell you, for your board, for your examination, any annual unit test or midterm or pre-boards or whatsoever, any exam, the one word questions, remember the first main of the question paper that I discussed with you, the questions can be from any part of the text. Okay, what happened one night? So you should be in a position to understand there was a heavy thunderstorm broke out, or where was the man's hut? So you should be in a position to answer, the man's hut was on the edge of the forest. Okay, who came to the man's hut? You should be questions may come from any point of the text. That's the reason that you should be very, very specific and careful enough in reading the text, because you need to take all the details, understand, keep it in your mind, and whatever the question that would be asked, you should be in a position to answer. The first man I'm talking about. Why? Because the first man always asks you only to write in a word or a phrase or in a sentence, right? So that's the reason that you should be very careful enough. Okay, so the elephant just came in and it requested rather or asked his friend My dear good man, look at the words, my dear good man, it says, and then, will you please let me put my trunk inside your hut to keep it out of this torrential rain. So it requested him if it can put its trunk in order to save its trunk from the torrential rain that was outside. Then the man, seeing what situation his friend was in, replied, my dear good elephant, my hut is very small, but there is room for your trunk and myself. Please put your trunk in gently. So did he rejected the request of the elephant? No, but he had his own what can I say? He had his own situations wherein the man could not. Why? Because the hut of the size of the hut was very small, isn't it? So the man, seeing at or looking at the condition of the elephant or something, my dear good elephant, my hut is very small. He has his own limitations because his hut was very small. The hut was very small. But there is a room. Room here is the reference to what? Space. Okay. ROOM. Room can be a room where you live in. You have your own room to stay in your homes, isn't it? In the similar way, room is also a space, a reference to space. So this word can be used as a homonym. A word which is pronounced in the same way with same spelling but can be used in two different contexts. Give me some room. When you say that, what do you mean by that? Give me some time, give me some space, isn't it? In the similar way, but there is a room for your trunk and myself. Yeah, there is enough space wherein your trunk can be put in. Or you can put your trunk in, and for myself there is enough space, so please you can put your trunk in gently. So this was the response given by the man, right? So this was the response given by the man. Then see what happens. The elephant thanked his friend. You have done me a good deed, and one day I shall return to your kindness. So this is normally we do it, isn't it? So this is something that we always do to anyone else. So if you approach any person for any kind of a help, if they do offer you help, you definitely tell them in the form of like, one day I will reward or I will return something, whatever. So this is the same kind even the elephant did. So the elephant thanked his friend and said that you have done a very good deed by allowing me to put my trunk in, and one day I shall definitely return to your kindness. So these were the words spoken by the elephant in terms of a kind of a reward for the elephant because it got a help from the friend, that is from the man. But what followed? So author is telling us like, he questions us like, but later on what happened? What followed? As soon as the elephant put his trunk inside the hut, slowly he pushed his head inside. So follow it very carefully. He followed the moment it was allowed to put the trunk in. Slowly it started putting out his head inside the hut and finally flung the man out in the rain and then lay down comfortably inside his friend's hut, saying, my dear good friend, your skin is harder than me. Who's saying this? That is the elephant, right? So look at the look at the way this elephant was dealing with his friend, so-called friend. It asked for a permission to put the trunk inside his hut. When the man agreed to offer the elephant the help, what it slowly started doing? It slowly started getting inside the hut, isn't it? So first it put its trunk, then slowly started putting his head, and in such a way that it happened, finally it entered the hut that was belonging to the man, and the man had to come out of the room or the hut because of no space. Right. So flung the man out in the rain. So the man was thrown out of his hut and then lay down comfortably inside his friend's hut, saying that, now okay, so it occupied, so to say, like, it occupied the hut that was belonging to the man, and the man who was the actual owner of the hut is now seen laying outside, drenching in the rain. And not only there, the elephant continued saying that, my dear good friend, your skin is harder than mine, and as there is not enough room for both of us, you can afford to remain in the rain while I am protecting my delicate skin from the hailstorm. So, can you see the irony here? What do you mean by irony? Irony is something that is happening with something that is unexpected, isn't it? So, the man never ever expected that if I give you some space, this elephant would shut me out of my own hut and tell me a reason like this. But in actuality, do you really think that the skin of the elephant is harder than that of a man, or softer? You take a call on that, isn't it? So I'm just trying to tell you something about the colonization, This is how these Europeans started entering to other countries by saying this. So you have to think in that way as well. So, my dear good friend, your skin is harder than mine. And as there is not enough room for both of us, you can afford to remain in the rain while I am protecting my delicate skin from the hailstorm. Hailstorm, once again, reference to the thunderstorm that broke out. Okay, so here when we are talking about the skin, okay, you have to think it in a way that how is normally a person from Kenya or an African country? He is supposed to be a black skin, isn't it? You all know that, right? So how is normally a skin of an European, so to say? So both are opposite to each other, isn't it? So here there is a white man, the other one is nothing but a black. So it is offending to call them as Negroes. You should not call them as the word like Negroes, but you have to call, or you have to take a call that they were belonging to the black-eyed, or they were the people with black skin, so to say. So according to this elephant here, it says that its skin is, the elephant says that your skin is harder. That is a reference to the black people saying that your skin is harder than my skin. So there is no enough room for both of us. So we both cannot stay in this hut as the room or the space is very little. Either anyone can be or able to live here, or there can be only one who can stay in this hut because of no space. So hence what I do is that you can take care of your harder skin while I will stay in this hut and take care of my skin which is softer. But when you say about the irony, in actual fact, do you really think that the skin of an elephant would be softer? Not at all, isn't it? So that is what is called as the irony. So the text is telling us something, but the actuality is something else. So that is called as irony here. Okay, so the elephant is now ruled out the man from his own hut where he was the owner of the hut. So can you see the colonization coming in to the European country, to the Africa or to the Kenya or to the Kikuyu tribal people? So what has happened is nothing but an example of a colonization. So what we see here is that as the days followed on, we could see that elephant did not restrict itself to just keep only the trunk, but it slowly started occupying the hut that was belonged to the man. And obviously the man was a black skinned person, isn't it? Because we are talking something about an African country or about a person who is belonging from African continent, isn't it? So that's why what we see here is that there was slowly the preoccupation of the elephant in the form of a hut that was belonging to the man. So what? Now the man is homeless, isn't it? He has been shut out of his own house and he was allowed to come out of his own hut and keep drenching on the hailstorm. Hailstorm, what is hailstorm? Hailstorm is again heavy rain with hails, those stones, like hailstorm. The man, seeing what his friend had done to him. Do you really think that man will be keeping quiet? Let us see what he does. So the man, seeing what his friend had done to him, started to grumble. He started shouting, yelling, grumbling. He was very angry. At the same time, he was shouting for the right that he has lost just a while ago. So he was grumbling. The animal, so he was shouting in such a way that the animals in the nearby forest heard the noise and came to see what was the matter. So, after becoming very angry, the man started grumbling, shouting, yelling in such a way that he was heard by the nearby forest animals. So, all the animals who could hear the noise or the voice of this man shouting, they came to see what was the matter. All stood around listening to the heated argument between the man and his friend. So, they both started yelling at each other, that is the elephant as well as the man who was there in the hut. Though all the other animals who came from the nearby forest, they all stood around and they were patiently listening to the heated angry. Okay, so the heated argument that was happening between this man and the elephant. In this disturbance, the lion came along roaring. We all know that a lion is the king of the jungle, isn't it? So when all the other animals also came and stood around looking at what was the matter, we also see that the lion, the king of the jungle, also came roaring and said in a very loud voice that, "Don't you know that I am the king of the jungle? How dare anyone disturb the peace of my kingdom?" Underline that. Okay, don't you know all that I am the king of the jungle? So after listening to the heated argument between these two, and at the same time about the grumbling of this man who was shut out of his own hut, yes, there were other animals who came from the nearby forests. At the same time, even the king of the jungle, lion, also came roaring, and he also started, "How dare you to disturb the peace in my own kingdom?" So he just started asking them, who is that who is showing or who is disrespecting or who is who is the person one who is disturbing the peace in my kingdom? On hearing this, the elephant, who was one of the high ministers in the jungle kingdom. Okay, now he goes back to the fable. Jomo Kenyatta goes back to the fable, and he tells us about the description, saying that on hearing this, the elephant, when it heard that who is that disturbing the peace in my kingdom, when the lion said, the elephant, who was also one of the high ministers, the hierarchy, like there is a prime minister, then he has the cabinet ministers, all those stuff. In the similar way, in a jungle, there used to be the minister. Just assume it in that way, fable. Okay, so who was one of the high ministers in the jungle kingdom. So in that particular kingdom, this elephant who took refuge in the man's hut, was belonging to one of the high portfolio ministers. That is, the elephant was one of the high ministers of the jungle kingdom, replied in a soothing, very slow, normal and convincing voice, and said, "My lord, there is no disturbance of peace in your kingdom." So it is just trying to convince the king of the jungle, lion, by in a soothing voice saying that there is no disturbance of peace in your kingdom. I have only been having a little discussion with my friend here as to the possession of this little hut which your lordship sees me occupying. Look at the blame, look at the way this elephant is making this man to accept the deed which was done by the elephant, isn't it? So now what we see here is that the elephant, who was also the one of the higher ministers of the jungle kingdom, started talking to the king of the jungle in a very slow, in a very convincing voice, saying that no, there is no disturbance in your kingdom, my lord. It was just we were having a little discussion about the possession. To whom does it belong to? So we were just having a discussion with my friend here as to the possession of this little hut. So we were just having a discussion about who is the owner of this hut. We are just having a discussion which your lordship sees me occupying. That is, it went on even to say that this little hut, we are just having a discussion. That is, elephant is saying that this hut belongs to me, but on the other hand, the man, let us see what does he say. So I'll just stop here and we will discuss the rest of the lesson probably in the next class. So what you need to understand here is that you need to understand about what is colonization is all about and how is it told by Jomo Kenyatta with an example of a fable. So you know all the details about whatever we have discussed so far. So keep things in your mind, okay, especially the one words or the phrases or the sentences about what has been happening in the story, and you will have to have definitely a very serious or a very quick at the same time very serious reading, or you should be very careful enough in understanding the words or the phrases told by the author here. So we are at a point where there is an argument that was happening between the man and the elephant on the possession of the hut, but in actuality we know as readers that the hut was the possession of the man. And you know in the course of the lesson what exactly happened. But now what we see here is that the elephant, which is one of the high ministers of the jungle of the kingdom, is trying to convince the man, saying that this hut doesn't belong to the man, but it belongs to the elephant itself. So we'll stop here and we will continue it in the next class. Thank you very much.